I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana, so I'm a good Midwesterner. Even though my parents said they wanted to have a bunch of boys, they had 4 girls. And I always have to identify myself by the number. So I'm number 3 out of 4. Grew up in a tiny little house. I don't know where my mother got this expression, but she used to say that we lived in the house with the elbow sticking out. I think that must have meant that the house was too small. Because it was, well, when I was younger, it was 2 bedroom, 1 bath. And then my 4th sister came along. My dad was an architect. So they built another bedroom and half bath onto the back of the house. But still, to have 4 girls and only have a bath and a half, we were fighting over that shower. I mostly shared a room with my youngest sister, who was actually born on my 4th birthday. I remember having bunk beds. And I remember that we would develop this communication system where I would be on the top bunk and she'd be on the bottom bunk, and I put my hand down and I had certain symbols of what I would do to communicate. And the symbol I particularly remember is there was some sort of symbol for, like, I love you. So I remember reaching down and using this hand signal to tell my little sister that I loved her, without making any noise, of course. I went to the public school. It was within a 5-block walk of my house, and so we walked to school and had, the patrol, where you had somebody with the little white belt and the little badge standing on every corner. I got to be that when I got older. Interestingly, my kindergarten was the first desegregated kindergarten. That put me in an interesting time of history. I would have been the first one to have Black kids in my class, and Black teachers as well. It was just Anita, Tyrone, Costina. I still remember their names because it was just all normal to me. I would have had no idea that this was a massive change happening. These were just my kindergarten friends. And there was a lot of consistency in the community, so I grew up all the way through elementary school with these same kids. There was only 1 class of each grade. So I got to know them well, which is why I still remember their names. My dad, I guess because he had 4 girls, he made us a dollhouse. And he made it from scratch. It had more bedrooms than our house did, actually. When I never really thought about it that way, but it was bigger than our house in a way. Going to sleep at night for a special treat, sometimes we would ask that the lights to the dollhouse stay on, and they would just kind of magically light up the room. My mother and father were actually high school sweethearts, so their families were both from the area, but my mother's parents died before I was born, and her brother and sister moved to different places. My dad's family was still around, at least his mother was, so I had one grandmother that was very close to the family, and she was a professional seamstress. Sometimes I'd come home from school and there'd be new clothes laying out on my bed, and it would be something that she had made that I got to come home to and receive. So that's what I remember about her. My dad, he was an architect, and he was always home at 6 o'clock for that dinner. And my mom was always preparing that dinner starting about 5:15. And the dining room table was what's called a drop leaf table. And when you put those leaves up, remember this is a small house, so the table filled the dining room and held 6 of us. And mom and dad always sat in the same place, right? And they were in between us, because sometimes we could get rambunctious or maybe even have a little fight at the dinner table, but mom and dad were right in between us, blocking. But if you were the person who had the inside corner, you had to be creative about how to get to that spot, because you couldn't get past my dad because his chair butted out. So oftentimes you see the person in that corner getting to that seat by going under the table and finding the spot. Spaghetti. No hesitation there. One of those vacations that we took, our car was actually stolen from the hotel parking lot. So when we got up in the morning, there was no car. But I remember, what I remember about that vacation was all the spaghetti dinners, because that was the day of like Howard Johnson's and everything. And all I knew is that we were at a Howard Johnson's, and I got to get spaghetti every single night.
Who cares about the car?
Yeah, who cares about the car? I get my spaghetti. When I had just a small group of girlfriends to parade around with, and that happened to be at my church. So we would have choir practice together, and we would go to church camp together. And, I can just remember even just hanging out in the bathroom with these girlfriends, and we'd climb up to the top of the stalls and sit on top of the partitions and just chat and be together and not even be aware of time. We were just together and had all the time in the world to talk about whatever we wanted to talk about, kind of that freedom. I got to sing in this awesome choir. It was an Episcopal church, and so the choir was kind of in the tradition of the Anglican boys choir. And when I was 18, we got invited to tour England and Scotland. So I got to sing in many of the big cathedrals over there. For instance, like the first stop was Westminster Abbey, and we got to be the Abbey choir for Evensong right after we got there. The organ, there was so much sound reverberation that you had to watch the conductor, because there was sound delay with the organ. So you couldn't listen to the organ and sing to the organ because it was delayed. That's how big this space is. I mean, I did run for like class mayor in the 3rd grade to remember that, but I don't think that really influenced my decision to do this. What influenced me to run for what was originally the State House was my social work education. I did a Bachelor of Social Work at Georgia State University, and one of my classes was Social Welfare Institutions and Policy. And an assignment in that class was to pick a bill that was going through the legislative process and follow it through. And of course, Georgia State University is right next to the Capitol. I would literally sit in the library looking at the Gold Dome. But it was that assignment that really woke me up to what happens here in this Capitol building, was following that bill and going to the rope line and paging legislators out. I remember paging Denmark Groover out. You have to have been around the Capitol for a while to even know who Denmark Groover was. But that was my first lesson to not all legislators are equal. Because somebody said, well, that person you pulled out of the chamber to speak to you has the power of like many legislators, not just one. But I had no idea when I paged him out. I remember a new kid coming into our class in 5th grade, and her name was Lisa. And immediately you knew that Lisa was a little different. Like she always wore the same dress, the exact same clothes, 2 days in a row. And the other thing I noticed about her was that she got F's on everything. So I decided at some point that I would invite her home with me so I could help her study for a spelling test. she came home with me and we studied together, and lo and behold, she got an A on that test. And so that told me something about her. That told me that she could do it. And I think that influenced me to want to go into social work. And I often sit back and I think about Lisa when we're down here legislating, because that's the kind of difference that we can make for kids. She wasn't dumb, she wasn't stupid. She just had a lot going on in her life, and a lot that wasn't good going on in her life. And so with a little attention, she could do just fine. And that was very impactful. Going back to my kindergarten being the first desegregated kindergarten, I remember when Obama started thinking about running for president, and I would hear discussions within my family about whether we could elect a black president or not. And I found this kind of line with people of a certain age and up didn't think we could elect a black president. And those of us who grew up under desegregation, we were like, well, why not? What's even the issue here? It was because of our experience being put together in the same classroom. We didn't see each other as different. And so it was much, I think, for my generation on, it was much easier to envision, of course, a president can be black. And I think that's because of desegregation.